Hey guys, it's Katie Grant with GlamGirlGlow.com. One of the questions that I've received lately is about Facebook groups. I've recently really spent a lot of time using Facebook groups to my advantage to help me get my business out there. Today I just really wanted to share some of the things I've learned with you about Facebook groups and using them to market yourself and your business. So Facebook is a great way to get yourself out there and get yourself known. Visibility on Facebook is really easy to achieve if you know what you're doing. Facebook like pages are great. I absolutely encourage them to everyone, but there are things that they can't do. There are currently 1.44 billion active users on Facebook. That's a lot of people, and over 900 million people use Facebook on a daily basis. There are 700 million Facebook groups out there, and the average Facebook user spends 41 minutes every single day on Facebook. So there are definitely lots of opportunities out there for you to connect with some of these people. Those 700 million Facebook groups cover a ton of different topics. There's almost certainly one out there for you that fits with your target market and that your ideal client would hang out in. One of the things you can't really do super well on a Facebook like page is get to know people and build connections and build relationships. Marketing well and getting that to convert to sales is really the business of making connections and building those relationships and getting people to know you. So how do I find groups to join? One of the really cool things that Facebook offers is called the graph search. Let's say I want to look for groups that people who like Marie Forleo might be into. So groups So we can search for groups with people who like Marie Forleo. We can see more of these, lots of different choices here. So basically what this means is that people who indicate on their profiles that they like Marie Forleo are also in some of these groups. That's one way that you can find groups to join. Another way is going to be through group suggestions. So I can go to groups and then I can go to suggested groups. And I can see all of the different groups that Facebook is suggesting for me. I can also look at friends groups. So these will be groups that my Facebook friends are a part of. And lastly, you can search for local groups. So that's just kind of a quick rundown of how Facebook makes it easy to find and join groups directly on your computer. There's one thing that has made my Facebook group interactions super simple and easy and even more fun that I've just discovered in the last couple of weeks, and that is the new Facebook Groups app on my phone. So when I open up the app, the opening screen shows at the top my favorite groups, and then below that you'll see all the rest of your groups. I'm in a ton of them. You can sort by alphabetical, the groups with the latest activity, and the most recently visited. So I always sort by recently visited. It just kind of helps me keep track of where I've spent my time lately. We can search for groups. We can also create a group. In the bottom here, we can go ahead and hit notifications. These are just going to be the notifications for groups. So I know I get a ton of Facebook notifications all day, every day, and sometimes keeping up with those interactions I've had in groups can be kind of difficult. If I stick to just looking at group stuff in the group app, it makes tracking everything a whole lot easier. And then there's the discover button, but it's just kind of an easier way to see things. I personally like this format for it better than the desktop version. I feel like it just kind of pulls everything together a bit more. You can see the description of the groups, you can see who's in it, and then if you're not interested in one, you can very easily say not interested and it won't keep showing it to you. Groups in the app are a lot easier to interact in and a lot easier to see. It's a bit of a prettier layout. It's also a bit more cohesive. To comment on something, you don't have to be jumping around. You can comment right there and you can very easily see previous comments without it changing to different screens. The most awesome part about the Facebook group app that using groups in the standard Facebook app doesn't offer is the search option. So up in the top right here, you can see the search. This will allow me to search the group for specific keywords. Maybe I want to find every post that has something to do with music in it. I can search music and I'll see all of these different options. Okay, so that's kind of how I join groups and how I use the app. When I'm choosing groups to join, I really just look at what it's about, if I think my target market will be there, and how active it is. A lot of times I will join a group for a few days, kind of scope it out, see how active it is, and then make a decision, do I stay in the group or do I leave? If it's not an active group, it's probably really not in my best interest to stay. Even if my target market is there, I probably won't ever run into them because they're not on there often talking and interacting or anything like that. How do I spend my time wisely and interact with people in a healthy and effective way to really get those sales and make a good return on my time investment? You need to play with it. The biggest thing that I've found is don't go into a group expecting to sell yourself. Groups are not about selling, and in fact, a lot of groups have bans on selling. If you even put a link to your website, you might get banned from the group. As with all of Facebook, you're not going to be successful if you try to sell on your like page either. Your like page, which I've talked about before and I'll talk about again, is for getting people to your website, not to sell them products. So in groups, you really want to make sure that you're being of service and letting people get to know you and getting your name out there. Getting my name out there and just helping, giving free advice, being willing to help people out really started gaining me traction. People knew my name, they knew that they could come and talk to me about certain things, and they knew that I would be helpful. How did I go about deciding where I was going to do that? Well, there's a few different ways. I've played around with a few, and it's really going to be important that you sit down and try a few different things to see what really works for you and your business. I started off going through my group list every day and just picking out 3 groups that I thought had been fairly active since the day before, where I could go in and I could provide feedback. They kind of spanned a wide variety of things, and my target market necessarily wasn't even 98% of those groups. It's a lot about just getting out there and making connections and practicing doing this. I found that kind of got time consuming because I wasn't always picking good groups that had enough for me to interact with to be able to post 5 times. So the next thing I did was I created a spreadsheet and I listed every single group that I was a part of, how active they were, and who the main audience in that group was. And I used that to help me narrow down the groups that would be best to spend my time in. From there, I've created a schedule, and on Monday I go to these groups, Tuesday I go to these groups, Wednesday I go to these groups, so on and so forth. And some of the less active groups that I'm in, I say I will visit this once a week or every other week or once a month. So I've kind of created a schedule for myself that I loosely use. I don't really stick to it necessarily. And I use that to help me spread my time out among all of the groups I'm in. I'm in a ton. Don't feel that you need to be in a ton. It's actually probably better if you narrow it down and just pick 3 or 4 or 5 to participate in, especially to start off with. I'm a Libra, so I'm super indecisive, so narrowing that down just wasn't going to happen for me, at least not right away. And at least not until I found the groups that I really enjoyed interacting with. Rather than focusing on helping a certain number of people, I spend 20 minutes in each group. During those 20 minutes, I try to interact with as many people as I can, discussing as many different topics as I can, and just practice getting myself out there. I never sell. I sometimes, if I think someone could really benefit from my services, I will say, I'll give a bit of free advice and I will say, hey, if you want to chat, send me a private message. I'd love to chat with you and see how we can work together or how I could help you. I've offered up a lot of my time for free, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I don't sell. I don't say go check out my offer. Disclaimer, I did do that. And when I was doing that, I felt super sleazy about everything I was doing. It didn't align with who I am or who my business is, and people could tell that, and I was not getting any results. In fact, I was wasting a lot of time and getting nowhere. Once you start getting yourself out there, it becomes incredibly easy to do, and it's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed interacting in these groups. Another thing that you can do to make the interaction super easy is use that search function. So maybe, as is the case with my friend Lori, she's a music health coach, so she goes into these groups and she just searches music, and anything related to music she comments on. And because music is her niche, that really helps her find the people that she can best serve. In terms of what groups to join, I do always suggest that you join either a closed or a secret group. Secret groups will not show up in any of the searches or suggestions that you go through. Closed groups are also great because the wall stays closed and anything you type on them will never appear on one of your friends' news feeds unless they are also in that group. So it's a great way to keep things kind of secret. Things can get pretty vulnerable and personal, which is a great place for you to be able to step in and share your expertise and give some love. Open groups tend to be a lot spammier and aren't as interactive or as personal, so I don't really suggest joining those. In fact, I almost never join an open group. Every time I do, I actually regret it and leave within about a week. And lastly, do you join groups or create your own? I really suggest joining other groups to start off with. See how other groups are run. See what you like happening in other groups and what you don't like happening in other groups. Until you've participated in a few and have a good feeling of how they work, it's really difficult to create a successful group of your own. Start small, play with it yourself, explore other groups, see what kind of group is missing from the Facebook group world so that you can figure out where you fit in before you go ahead creating your own. I really love them because as an introvert, it's a great way for me to interact with people who I otherwise would never get to know. It's a great way for me to build relationships. It's a great way for me to help people and serve people. I've worked with people for free. I've given away some of my best stuff for free. And when I've really focused on giving and serving and not selling is when I've sold. When I've tried to sell is when I get crickets or I get people who are really angry at me for selling. Focus on being of service and building relationships and making connections, and I promise Facebook groups are going to be successful for you.